Hello, and thanks for joining us on the podcast that discusses all things gaming. Coming to you from the home of Gen Con and the gaming capital of the world, this is The Established Facts. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Established Facts. We are here on day 2 of Indy PopCon 2015. Can I get a shout-out from everybody in the food court that's still awake? All right, 5 people. Woo!
That was like 6.
Yeah,
6? Okay.
There's at least 10 here.
At least, yeah. There's a couple guys sleeping in the corner.
I mean, I'm not saying they're awake, but they're there.
But they're present. They're present. Your presence is being felt. So, this is episode 101 of The Established Facts. That's right. We've made it past 100, which is remarkable considering...
I'm on it.
It's just really remarkable. It's just... So, we have had a lot of really cool opportunities to talk to some awesome people here at Indy PopCon, and we have another great opportunity with a company called Happy Badger Studios today. We're going to be talking about some indie developing versus, I guess, what you might call big box developers or some AAA. I like that, AAA developers. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do a roundtable introduction for everybody who is here at Indy PopCon and also all of you out there in the interwebs world. To let you know who is on the show today, I'll start with the one gentleman to my right, and then we'll go down to the end of the table and come back this way.
It's Josh.
I'm Avital.
I'm Prime.
And I'm Ben from Happy Badger Studio.
All right. And this is your host, Big Don. All right. So, Ben, welcome to The Established Facts.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is great.
Hey, not a problem. Just so you know, you are ruined for life. So, we had a really cool opportunity to talk with you and, was it?
Dana.
Dana.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's you and Dana and Carol?
Yeah, we're the 3 partners.
Just hanging out here today for... Indy PopCon. You guys are from... Well, tell us... Just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
We're just an independent game studio from St. Louis, Missouri. Just a hop, skipping away from where we are now. And we're a small studio. We're 3 partners and a total of 5 people at the studio. So we're very, very tiny. And we work on games. It's sort of our passion, but we also do software dev for clients. And that's what pays us to work on games.
Very cool. And in general, what kind of got you into gaming and things like that?
Oh, wow. It's a long story. I mean, I think it's different for each of us, as you would know. For me, it was, I was one of these kids that wasn't allowed to have games in the house when I was a kid. So I'd go to my friend's house and get to play on NES and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and that was so eye-opening for me. I was like, this is so cool. So as soon as I was able, I became a game collector, and from there I started dissecting mechanics and thinking like, oh, I can come up with some of this stuff. I can make game mechanics, and I could probably do this. So started a game club in college, and then carried that on, and eventually we just started partnering with some other folks in St. Louis and started building stuff, and slowly worked to where we are now. We did a lot of mobile games. The past 4 years, we've been making different kinds of mobile games, and this is the game we're working on now is our first sort of big-time console game. We got greenlit on Steam. We got publication deals with Sony. So this is like our big jump into the foray of console and Steam games.
Well, and while we're talking about it, before we get into our versus topic and discussion, tell us a little bit about the game that you're currently developing that, like you just said, is greenlit for Steam and Sony and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the name of the game is Smugglecraft, and it's a quest-based hovercraft game. You're a smuggler, and you get to choose who you want to do your smuggling for, and depending on who you help in this world, it's sort of a dystopian, political upset world. you can actually have an impact on the world. So it takes it's sort of a different take on racing games. So a lot of racing games, you kind of get a lot of the same. You get the same tracks you do over and over again. In our game, the tracks are all randomly generated, so you get a different track every time you play. Most racing games, the story is like win the gold cup or become the champion racer, which is pretty mundane. In ours, it's like you're a smuggler and you get to choose how you impact this world that you live in. So it's trying to just like take racing, which is something that we love. Like as a studio, we all kind of love racing games. We love like Crazy Taxi, F-Zero. We want to do something that just is a little bit different than what has normally been done with it.
And as we kind of talked about earlier, what are some of those really cool, unique things that are going on with your game that you haven't gotten a chance to see in other games that really kind of push you into doing this?
Yeah, I mean, the procedural generation, I think, is the big one, because that's, for me, is like, when you play a racing game and you're just kind of doing laps on the same tracks over and over again, it kind of kills the longevity of the game for me. Because, you can play online, and that's fun because it's different every time, but it's still kind of the same. With our game, we've built the game so that there's all these modular environment pieces, there's all these modular track pieces that can be put together in almost an infinite number of combinations. So every time you play, you're getting something that you haven't seen before. There might be familiar pieces to it, but you never know what the arrangement's going to be, and we're adding in a lot more. That's something you haven't seen yet. There's going to be additional randomization. So sometimes you might be familiar with a piece, but there might be a different part to it, or there might be a different obstacle in that piece that you're not used to.
Or maybe like flipped or something.
It could be flipped. Yeah, it could be reversed. There could, maybe this time there's a obstacle. Maybe next time there's a power up. So every time it's more about adapting to what you're given versus memorization.
Okay.
Another aspect that we actually haven't got into because there's not a lot of it in the game yet, but we're giving players a high level of autonomy. So we're actually letting you, the player, kind of choose what you want to do in the game. And this comes down even to, so like you might have seen in the demo, you have kind of this loan shark, and you have to pay this debt back to the loan shark. And in the demo, you have until the end of the day, which in this case, it's 5 tracks until you have to pay the loan shark back. You can actually just choose not to pay him. Like, it's kind of... almost, it's obviously not as in-depth as something like Fallout, but it's kind of that idea where it's like, just because the game is set up to pay a loan shark doesn't mean you have to. You can just keep the money and see what happens. What's going to happen is bounty hunters. Right. That's what's going to happen. But you have that option. I think that's really cool to give players the option to do what they would actually do in the real world, or experiment with it.
Right. Well, that's very cool. That's very cool. Well, so we're going to go ahead and get into our versus topic today. For those of you who have never gotten a chance to experience the established fact, we do a versus topic at the beginning of our show that leads into a discussion topic, and then we'll close out with an established fact, a new established fact for every episode, which literally means we have more than 101 established facts, which is kind of depressing. But
it's not depressing.
It's not?
No,
it's not depressing at all, Josh.
Kind of cool,
Why would you say
actually.
that?
It's super exciting.
So, what our versus discussion topic today is about is we've had a discussion before on indie developers versus big box developers. So our versus topic is specifically focused on the video game genre, and especially with Xbox One and PlayStation 4 really catering to a lot of that ingenuity in the independent game world. So this is a preference. What do you prefer? Indie video game developers, or, as Ben has labeled them, AAA game developers, so your Bethesdas and your EAs and things like that, versus Happy Badger or Double Bomb. So let's go ahead and start, ladies, first with Avital. Indie versus AAA.
No pressure.
No, honestly, I have to say AAA because that's really all I have experience with. I mean, I could maybe really enjoy indie games. I just haven't played with them because I don't play that many video games in general. So,
Prime?
I'm going to be the guy who sits on the fence today.
Okay.
Wah, wah.
Ben?
It's really hard to say which one I prefer, because to me, I mean, both of them have really great aspects, and I play a lot of both. I mean, I guess I am partial, being that I am an indie developer. I do really enjoy indie games, and I seek out indie games, and I probably don't do that with AAA games. I mean, if something is really cool looking, I'll pick it up, but I don't really seek out AAA games the way I seek out indie games.
Okay. Joshy?
I think I've spent the most money on AAA games, but being a PlayStation Plus subscriber, every month they give away games. Very often they give away independent games, and I think I've tried out almost every one that I've downloaded. So I have a heart for independent games, but I'm going to have to vote AAA on this one.
And I think I'm probably going to have to agree with you. I love the idea of what independent games have in store for the marketplace, but I think because it is such a new area, kind of a new uncharted area for game developing, and not necessarily, obviously Bethesda had to come from somewhere, EA had to come from somewhere, but there is this marketplace now for just raw inventiveness when it comes to games that has never been a big thing. So I would also have to say AAA gaming with the aspiration that one day I can change that answer, because I just think indie gaming is something that brings a lot of ingenuity to the marketplace, and it kind of shakes things up a little bit for those big name game developers to kind of look at what very similar to we've had several discussions on crowdfunding. Crowdfunding brings an option for the person who is trying to get into whatever that thing, widget, or what have you might be. So you have the option to say, you know what, I would really like to see this product on the table, or you know what, that doesn't really interest me. And I think where crowdfunding has really kind of opened the eyes of a lot of people, indie developers, when it comes to gaming, are becoming more sought after because they have a little bit different interpretation on the world around them. So let's see. Prime, I think I'm going to start with you fence sitter. Kind of give us the back and forth. Why is it kind of difficult for you to choose one over the other?
Well, I think for me, it's solely dependent upon the platform that I'm playing on. So, let's say since I'm an Xbox junkie, for me, Xbox, they don't really focus as much on independent gaming as like PlayStation would. But so I would go for more of the AAA games for the Xbox. But if I'm playing on PC or if I'm on Steam or something like that, then I'll probably vary back and forth on whether or not I want to play an independent game or not. Just because I like the concept of new ideas. And my whole theory is if I'm buying a game for like $10 and it's an independent game, if I don't like it, then I'm only out like $10. You know what I mean? Versus spending $60 on a game, AAA game that I might not like. So I think that's what it is for me. So
okay. Avital, you said for the most part AAA gaming because that's what you have a lot of experience in.
Right.
For us and everyone who's listening to us, kind of give your reasoning to why you feel like it is it's a lot, I don't know, maybe easier access to those bigger name game developers and things like that. Like, why would you choose AAA over indie?
Well, I don't play that many video games, like at all. Honestly, I haven't played a video game in I don't know how many months. A lot of my experience with video games is watching my brother play, and he does play a lot of big name developers. I almost wish he was here to get his opinion on this because I know that he does play a lot of, big names. However, I've seen him sitting there for, hours playing some little game that he got off, the Xbox store, whatever that thing is called. So I know that he plays both. But I mean, he is, a big fan of, big names, Assassin's Creed, whatever, things like that. Honestly, I think with, the way the Xbox and PlayStation have the online stores out there, like, it's making the indie games, like, way more available than they ever used to be. And I think that's really cool because it's offering, like, a lot of opportunities for people that maybe had an idea to get it out there, to get their game or whatever out there, way more than any time in the past that they ever could have done that. So,
Ben, I have a question.
Yeah.
Pertaining specifically to our versus topic, what are some of the challenges that being someone who enjoys video games and has for a very long time, it sounds like, kind of having a heart for those big name AAA companies, but also being an indie developer, what are some of the challenges that you have to overcome as an indie developer to kind of get your mind out of what the big companies are doing to really make yourself a unique piece in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think to some degree, most indies can't do what the big companies do. They can't do a AAA game. And I think that's actually kind of good because it means that there's things that AAA does really well, and then that also creates constraints so that there's things that indies do really well. So AAA is really good at making games with incredibly high polish. Games that just visually totally blow you away. Games that are huge in scope, right? I mean, you look at something like Destiny and how big Destiny is, or some of the big MMOs out there, and you just think man, there's just so much content. The landscape of this game, the environment is so vast. There's so much that you can do and see, and that's just something that it's almost impossible for an indie developer to create something like that. And so I think it's really great to have AAA studios, and I don't want to see them go away at all because I like some of those games. I play Destiny a lot. On the other hand, I think what big studios don't do well, or I shouldn't say don't do well, but don't tend to focus on is innovation, right? So this is sort of the cliche adage of Call of Duty is Call of Duty is Call of Duty. They make a new one every year, and there's some new stuff in it, but it's still the same
game with a different
running around,
skin.
shooting people. It's all the same thing, and I think that's great. Like I said, I play Destiny, so I don't dislike running around and shooting things, but I also want something new and different.
Right.
And I think that's what indie games do really well, because the thing is, a big studio, when you're talking about millions of dollars budget for a game, you can't afford to take a risk on something that's totally different. Whereas in indie, if your budget is $20,000 in 6 months, you can do something that's totally out there, and you're not taking that big of a risk.
Well,
even if it does nominally well, you'll probably cover your cost.
I'd imagine as an indie developer, you kind of want something that makes your game stand out over everyone else's too.
Exactly. And so the thing is, if you guys think back a decade or two when games were still pretty young, I'm talking Sega Genesis, N64 days, back then it was is this game good or does it just suck? Because some games were at that point they were awful. You're just unplayable. I think we're at a point now where most games that are published are decent in terms of the fact that they're playable, they have the controls work, they're decent looking. So now it's no longer about is it good or bad? It's about, is it providing me something new and different that I haven't done before?
So the marketplace has really kind of set the bar as to what is acceptable in the gaming world for a consumer and what is not.
Yeah.
So a game that came to mind for me, I didn't spend a lot of time playing it, but it is one that kind of left an impact from an independent perspective, was the Limbo. I just looked up, I think it was VGX developers, or no, that's not, it was, I was just looking at that, I'm sorry. I know Microsoft Studios was behind it, but Playdead and Double 11 developers. It was released in 2010 for the Xbox 360 and ultimately made its way to the PlayStation 3. And the game has always kind of stuck in my head because it's almost like the entire game was a 3-color game, black, white, and red, and it was all mixtures in between. And it was a 2-dimensional puzzler, but had this deep and almost disconcerting storyline that was going on with it. But it was difficult, and yet so simplistic that it was beautiful. And it was something that, at that time, the PlayStation was really trying to kind of get their hold with their new sets of exclusives with the Uncharted series, and Xbox 360 was really trying to get Halo back up and running. And then this game Limbo appears, and I see many of my friends spending countless hours trying to get through this level that's just a side-scrolling puzzler type game. And it really kind of triggered something in me that was, I didn't realize exactly what the independent developers were going for until that came out. And then as the new consoles hit, it just seems like more content. Like, I think of Journey, or I think of even EA, who's a AAA game. They bought Zombies versus Plants vs. Zombies. Yeah. And have turned it into this major franchise. But it was a small-time game when it started, too.
It was like one guy.
And it's pretty amazing to see what the independent scene has been able to do with the right tools. My question then would be, you guys are obviously working with Sony. It's something that's going to... what type of tools have they provided for you to make this... to kind of make this dream of yours a reality?
So Sony's been great to work with. But what they provided is not so much tools, but support. Sony's been really supportive of us. So when we announced the game, they announced it with us on the Sony blog. They mentioned it in their podcast. When we shared a trailer for the game, they shared it on their YouTube channel. So like stuff like that, that's major for a small-time developer. Because where we would normally get like 100 views, we got like 40,000 views. That was huge for us. So Sony's been really great. But I think as far as tools, the thing is, the landscape is so different than what it was 10 years ago. The tools are just out there. I mean, there's umpteen different game engines. There's Unity, there's Game Maker, there's Game Salad, there's tons of others that you can choose to use. And not only that, but I think what kicked it off was honestly mobile. So when Apple released the iPhone and then subsequently released the App Store, it lowered the bar. Like anybody could then publish a game, whereas before you had to go through a publisher, which was a very difficult and daunting process. Apple just said, "Hey, just come to us and just publish your game on the phone, and you'll have instant players." So that made game development accessible to a lot of people. And I think where it's grown from then is, and I think this is still a perception that people have of indie developers, is like, well, they're just sort of making like crappier versions of other games. And that's, I think, maybe where some started 10, 15 years ago. Like, hey, I'm just going to make some kind of a Mario knockoff platformer for the iPhone just because I can, and I can do it, I can publish it. But now it's gone so much farther than that to like, well, let's just make games that are completely separate from what I've seen elsewhere.
So, what I feel like a lot of the marketplace has kind of opened itself up to is just a broader interpretation of what is I don't know, kind of a consumer friendly game. And I think what I appreciate about independent gaming, and this is kind of where I was going with when I was talking about, in my opinion, as far as the versus topic is concerned. I have always said I really enjoy kind of a reinterpretation or retelling of an old story in a different way. And I think that what opening up the independent market has done is it's allowed people to tell the stories that, maybe it may seem like you have an F-Zero mechanic with your racer or a Mario Kart mechanic with your racer, but you're telling a different story because you have these really awesome, unique elements and things like that to your game. As far as the future for this game or for Happy Badger, what are some of the things that you would like to see come from the success of this? Because I mean, like you said, you've already been green-lighted with Steam and with Sony, so obviously this is a thing now. What do you want to see just kind of come of that success and that opportunity?
For us, I mean, game development is our passion, and so if we could move to where our studio is working 100% full time on games, that's where we'd love to be. So that's kind of what we're hoping. We've published a bunch of mobile games in the past, but mobile's a very difficult market. It's very difficult to get traction there. And even if you do, it can be very short term. So it's hard to create a mobile game that will fund your studio for years to come. If you're lucky, it happens. But I think by taking the step into sort of a larger game, a more consumer accessible game on Steam and PlayStation, we're hoping for the game to do well enough that it'll pay for us to do another game. That would be the ideal scenario for us. And we're also, I mean, even hoping just for it to do well enough that we can spend some time maintaining the game once it's launched and creating new levels and new content to keep players playing for a long time.
All right, very cool. And you kind of brought up earlier that not only are you guys working on this game, but you have goals and you have a future that you want to set in place with development of other games. And you said something about and I don't know if I'm stepping on new ground and if I can say this, but you say you're kind of working on other styles of games as well as kind of themes for different kinds of video games and stuff like that as well. What other games are you guys kind of working on, or can you kind of give us a glimpse of?
It's hard to answer just because I feel like everything we've done. Some studios are really good at every game they launch has a very consistent feel, a very consistent theme, and it just sort of builds upon the same game world. And I think that's really awesome. We have some friends, Butterscotch Shenanigans, who are here, and they do that really well. Every game they publish, it feels like it's part of the same game world. We're kind of the exact opposite. Every game we publish feels totally and completely different from the last game we did. And so, after Smugglecraft, we have some ideas of what might come next. And I don't know exactly what they'll be, but I guarantee you it'll be totally, completely different from Smugglecraft. Totally not a racer, totally not, minimalist 3D with high-end lighting. It'll be something totally different than that. It could be even, it could be a card game. We do have a card game in the works that's like almost ready to publish, and we have another one that's just in the beginning phases. So it could be a card game, or it could be another video game that just has a very different theme to it.
Do you feel like, in general, your experience with what you've done with mobile gaming and then now what you're doing with your Smugglecraft right now, has that kind of given you a little bit better perspective on, in general, like game development and production and things like that, as far as, because there's a lot of similar steps when you go to publish a card game or a board game to a video game. Obviously, they're totally different genres, but there are certain things that you still kind of have to, benchmarks you still have to hit. Do you feel like your development in your mobile stuff and in Smugglecraft has kind of allowed you to prepare yourself for other types of game development?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're learning to do much better is PR and marketing. It's really hard to do with mobile games because unless your mobile game is really like breaking new ground, no one really wants to do a write-up on your game that's just like another version of something else. Like we did a mobile game for a donut company that was really cool. And it was like kind of like California Games. You're on roller skates. It was really awesome, but like it's still just something that we've kind of already seen before. Whereas doing a game like Smugglecraft that has a lot of uniqueness to it, it's much easier for us to go out and get press. Now we still have to be the ones to do that work and to make those connections. But that's what I think we're learning, is how to do that properly. So I think the next game, whether it's a traditional tabletop game or another video game, we'll kind of have that experience under our belt of this is how we promote it, this is how we get press about, to talk about it, and that's vital for a game's success.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on a spot, Avital, because you pointed out that you're not the most experienced video gamer we have here, because you just don't play as many video games. Mm-hmm. We have a video game developer sitting here. We have other video gamers that are here. What is it that draws you into a video game? What would interest you and cause you to be like, I really want to play that game?
Me personally, I'm not into like any of the first-person shooter type stuff. That's just not my scene. I mean, I've watched my brother play some really amazing games. They're like that. I mean, Halo and stuff like that is all really cool. It's just not my thing as much. Like I liked Fable, like more role-playing games, strategy and things like that. Honestly, some of my most interesting games have been, like, say, on Game Boy and stuff, like Pokemon and Golden Sun, like turn-based games. But it's just, like, story and role-playing is something that's going to draw me in. Just myself, like, I'm not one for, if I miss this like jump by a fraction, I'm gonna die. Like I hate stuff like that. It just ticks me off. Because I'm not that good at it because I haven't done it so much, So it's more like going around interacting, talking. It sounds like a boring game, but no, like like having a story and there can be fights and battle and things like that, but living in a world, living a story. Like I said, something like Fable was really cool for me because like you kind of grow up and your actions, like what you do over here gets you, infamy over here or whatever, things like that. But I mean, also just little like puzzle games and things are interesting too. Like, I mean, I play like a version of, a match 3 game on my phone that I really like, which is Marvel Puzzle Quest, and it's cool because you get to play like with Marvel characters, like it's things like that. So for me, it's the story, and of course, good graphics and interesting things to look at on the screen always help, like draw me into a game. And there are some racing games that I like. But not the ones that are more like NASCAR or like super. Those type of things like Mario Kart I really like, just because it's a little more silly, and fun. But your game sounds cool because it does sound like there's more of an actual. It's not just the racing because I can't play just a racing game for very long. Like it's not going to interest me.
Yeah, it gets boring really fast.
Yours sounds like a really interesting game, and I don't think there is currently a PlayStation in my house. There will be one eventually, even if I'm the one that has to get it. So
something I think indie games do really well is sort of break down this idea of gamer, because there's a sort of like conception that. In order to be a gamer, you have to play first-person shooters, and you have to be good at them, or you have to like spend a certain amount of your time per week playing games or being invested in games. And I think that's just not true. I mean, I think that's the way maybe we thought of it when games were pretty young. But like games are so diverse now, and there's all manner of games and all manner of people that enjoy different play styles. You don't have to like a certain kind of game to be a gamer, and you don't have to play games all the time to be a gamer. The mere fact that you enjoy playing some games sometimes makes you a gamer.
Right, absolutely.
And I think indie games helps provide more experiences, more diverse experiences that all manner of people can pick up and enjoy.
So, something that I enjoy doing as we kind of get things wrapped up into a nice little package for everybody who's listening, especially in situations like this where we're at Indy PopCon 2015. I like to ask our guests a couple questions about their experience at the con and things like that. So, Ben, what has your overall experience been at Indy PopCon so far for day 2?
So far, it's been great. I wish that we could get away from the booth a little more to actually explore. When we were walking here to the podcast room, we walked by like this huge arena of arcade games, and my eyes kind of like grew in size because I love retro games. I love arcade games, so like I want to go check that out. But it's been really fun. Like everyone's been super nice. We've had a lot of people come by the booth and play the game. We got some time on the Let's Play stage yesterday. So yeah, we've really enjoyed being here. This is our first time in Indianapolis, and we really like the city too. It's a pretty cool city.
Oh, thank you. I wish I had something to do with it. But
hey,
it's
you
just
live
a representative,
here, so.
I guess. So as far as possibly next year, after Smugglecraft has kind of hit the big market, and you guys are making millions and millions of bucks, you coming back to Indy?
I think we probably will. We were talking about that this morning actually, and I think this time next year it's going to be a month or two after our launch, ideally. So I think we'll probably come back and show the game again, and at this time we'll be able to say, and now you can download it on PlayStation and Steam.
A little cleaner and a little bit, as you put it, a little bit more polished.
Yeah.
And one thing, just to kind of veer off a little bit, but not too far. One thing that we kind of talked about a little bit is as a developer, some of the things that you deal with, especially as an indie developer, is the expectations of the marketplace when it comes